This is Hindu Lounge, a live weekly show on contemporary American Hindu issues hosted by Ajay Shah and Utsav Chakrabarti. This week, will China be less expansionist by following Dharma and abandoning Maoism?
Namaste, Utsada.
Namaste, namaste Ajay bhai.
Utsada, this is Hindu Lounge episode number 10, and we are coming live on Facebook as we always do on every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time in the United States and the corresponding times in other time zones. And we've been doing this now for 10 weeks, and we are so glad that we are able to come live to our viewers who are increasing in numbers every week, as we can see. And as always, we are going to take comments, questions, read out the names of the people who are joining us, all of that as the show progresses. Utsada, for people who are just joining us for the first time, I want to introduce you. Utsav Chakrabarti, he is the Director of Advocacy and Awareness for World Hindu Council of America, WHPA. And I am Ajay Shah. I am the Executive Vice President from World Hindu Council of America. And World Hindu Council of America has an initiative, Hindu Pact. And this is an awareness, a policy research advocacy initiative. And as part of that initiative, every week we do this Facebook live show called Hindu Lounge. And as I said, we come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And then subsequent to the program, we post whatever we have recorded. This program, we post it on YouTube as well. And we are going to open up more channels. So, for example, we are going to start a website which should be live by next week. And we are also exploring the ways in which we can make this program more interactive. So stay tuned as we evolve our program and go beyond our initial learnings. This show will become more and more rich. So as we roll this show out, I want to introduce the topic for the week. The main topic for this week, Utsoda, is everywhere everywhere we turn. China has become more and more expansionist, and China is taking on aggressive postures in all its neighborhoods. I can see it. You started seeing that in South China Sea a few years ago, and then you saw it in Doklam in 2017, and near the Sikkim border in India, and this in last, I guess, about 3 weeks. The Chinese Communist PLA, People's Liberation Army, has become very aggressive in its posture in the other regions where where India and China has a border called Line of Actual Control, LCA, and they have become LAC rather, Line of Actual Control, and they have become very aggressive. And this time, unfortunately, 20 Indian soldiers were martyred fighting Chinese, and because Chinese were trying to take away a large region of the Indian territory. And as so that that this is the region that is called Pangong Lake in Ladakh, and it's really near the Tibet and Ladakh border. And in late May, the Chinese forces, India was just constructing a road in the Galwan River Valley, and Chinese forces objected to the Indian road construction. And then this fighting ensued, and one of the colonel level officers of Indian Army died as well, along with 20 other soldiers, and 10 were captured. Now, Chinese, of course, don't release their death figures, so nobody really knows how many people from China died. But this is not something that was unforeseen. On November 7th, 1950, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru actually was sent a letter by Sardar Patel. So Sardar Patel told Panditji that outside the Russian camp, we have practically been alone in championing the cause of Chinese entry into United Nations Security Council, as one of the 5 vetoing members. But China, they continue to regard us with suspicion, and the whole psychology is one, at least outwardly, of skepticism, perhaps mixed with little hostility. It looks though it is not a friend speaking in that language, but a potential enemy. This is Sardar Patel on 7th November 1950, and then he sent a letter saying that be careful, India will end up fighting a two-front war. So that taking from there, uh, then so China keeps breaching. China has been trying to encircle India, and uh, being in an expansionist mode all over the neighborhood. They have been threatening the countries who share the border. They have built artificial islands in South China Sea and have threatened countries like Vietnam. They have been using their surplus cash to offer, countries loans for infrastructure and then get them into debt traps. And by using that debt trap, then they usurp the territories of this country without firing a single bullet or having any war. For example, the Tota port in Sri Lanka was just as Chinese government basically took a 99-year lease on that port, a strategically important port, and all because they gave a $1.5 billion loan to Sri Lanka, that Sri Lanka at a very high interest rate. Sri Lanka couldn't pay it back, and all of a sudden now this is a Chinese outpost in Sri Lanka, and they're doing the same thing in Pakistan. They have funded the CPAC project in Pakistan as part of their same Belt and Road initiative that they have, the BRI initiative, and they're doing the same in Nepal. I mean, we talked about a little bit about Nepal last time, and they're funding infrastructure projects, and they're saying, in addition to infrastructure projects, they're giving the Nepali school free funds so that they can teach Mandarin in Nepali school. A whole generation of Nepalis who have been now are being converted to communists, abandoning their Dharma roots, and now they're being uh, assimilated into China, much like Tibet, if India doesn't wake up and all the other countries around the region don't wake up. So my question for you is, and my question for you is, why what's happening with China? I mean, China was not always like that, right? And now we see that China is uh, China has become this expansionist country. So what changed in China?
Well, thank you, Ajay bhai, and thank you for that generous introduction. Today, as you can see, I'm trying to match your, your lavish vacational background that you have. I realized I should match you, so I decided to sit out. So I hope our audience can hear me, and there are not too many extraneous sounds, nature sounds, I guess, around us. But so I'm hoping that this works. In future, also, I'll try to sit out and enjoy the weather while we speak.
Absolutely.
So
and by the way, your great background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was worried about the light, but because I was sitting under a tree. So I think what the topic we have brought in today that you so aptly described is something that is going to capture the imagination and probably the geopolitical thought process of the world for at least a few decades to come, and that is the situation of China and its global ambitions. Now, if you look back about 40-50 years, China has looked at itself since the communist takeover of Mao Zedong, uh, itself as an imperial flag bearer of Marxism. And it started off historically, when Mao came to power, he purged, killing about 20 million people of his own people. He purged the entire dharmic tradition of China that had developed over the last 3,000 years. And, that included Confucianism, that included Taoism, a very rich heritage of Bauddha traditions that came from India and were very well integrated in the Chinese society, and was it was a very good confluence of multiple dharmic systems that had developed well in China for over 3,000 years. And what Mao did in the 1950s and 60s was a very brutal and violent purge. And that resulted in China pretty much erasing the blackboard of Dharma, wiping it clean. And not only did China do that in its own country, but it did that in Tibet once it took hold of Tibet. Tibet, as most people from the Indian subcontinent know, has been a repository of Mahayana Buddhism for a very long time, especially when India faced severe threat of Islamic conquest and was under Islamic rule for about 600 years. Tibet was one of the places where dharmic traditions survived. Many of the monks would escape to Tibet and find refuge there. So Tibet got wiped out, and it still faces that kind of a situation as we speak. Similar situation was created in places like Cambodia, in places like in Vietnam. So China has developed this tradition over the last 50, 60 years of wiping out dharmic traditions that were present in these East Asian countries, very much connected to the dharmic traditions of India, I must say. Uh, and they kind of replaced it where they could with a very violent form of Maoist Marxism. Um, and eventually China realized in the 80s sometime that it has blundered in its ways. So what it did was it tried to use both Buddhism and Confucianism in a way where it could export it as a geopolitical tool. And China tried that for a small period of time, and it still tries that in some areas. But essentially, if your core is hollow, and if you are using something as a tool rather than really believing in it, especially if something as spiritual as Mahayana Buddhism or Confucianism or Taoism or other dharmic traditions, it doesn't really work. And China is realizing that. China complains that its Confucius institutes are not working, because it's not Confucius Institute. It's just in the name of Confucius. It's actually a spying outpost around the world that China has been creating. So its shallow embrace of Dharma as a geopolitical tool hasn't worked, and it goes back to its old tested tradition of exporting Maoist, violent Maoism as a way of expanding its geopolitical reach. And in doing that, it has created unrest in its region. It has exported Maoist, violent left extremism, which is called Maoism in India. It is one of the most violent terror conglomerates in the entire world, and it's caused more than 10,000 deaths over the last decade. Innocent people, people who are poor, dying. So China has this is vicious, brutal export of Maoism, ideological Maoism, paired with its newly found richness that it uses to put countries and small countries and economies in debt, using its Belt and Road Initiative and its string of pearls, as they say in the Indian Ocean. So it's a complicated but extremely ambitious and violent move that China has been making. So we must see the situation in Galwan Valley and what is happening in Ladakh in that light. And I would also try to say, put this thought through, that I think China was feeling the pressure of having had to take the blame, rightfully so, for not paying attention to the export of the corona, the COVID-19 virus, and its inability or unwillingness to stop it in its initial phases. So China was feeling this pressure, and the best way it could respond and maintain its so-called geopolitical superiority in the region was try to show its muscle. So what you see in Galwan Valley and the way China aggressively has recalibrated its aggression towards India, it's a result of a mixture of these things.
So I just want to read out the names of some of the people who have just joined us live, and I can see only a few names because it just scrolled by. But Tejal Shah has joined, Amitabh Mittal has joined, Sanjay Jingan has joined, and Sanu Raja has joined. So I want to welcome all of them. I think there are about 4 more people whose name I can't see. But I want to welcome everyone who has joined, and I welcome them to put their comments out and questions out and join us in this live chat that we are having. So that you created a couple of really good slides in the map. So if you don't mind, I can share those slides, and you can actually talk a little bit about these slides. So let me just go and show the slides to our audience, and maybe you can just make some comments on how China has you know progressed in taking over the territories around it. So
Sure.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
I mean, this slide, as you can see, it looks at what China was traditionally seen as, and it the world now has come to believe as China being a monochromatic Han dominated, almost singular entity. But it never was that way until the Maoist cultural revolution crushed everything that stood in the way of this kind of a unified, strong, so-called, it was done with the use of force. So the map below here in the slide shows uh, how China breaks down. China is essentially, most of China is Tibet and East Turkestan, or as the currently the world calls them, the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province. So, and then you have the Inner Mongolian region, and so you can see that China is essentially just that red part that you see in the middle as being the core of what actually used to be China. But it was this aggressive, violent, cost 20 million lives, that purge that took over this entire region and turned it into what is we know as China today, using Maoist tradition, violent Maoist extremism. And the picture above actually shows when Dalai Lama, when China attacked Tibet, and Dalai Lama had to escape to India and seek shelter in India. And India, true to being the traditional beholder, it's the crucible of dharmic traditions in entire Asia and around the world. So India had the responsibility of protecting and giving shelter to him uh, in those days, in the 1960s.
And you have a couple of other slides. Let me just go to that, and maybe you can speak to that. But I just this was you know the repercussions of India accepting Dalai Lama and the expansionist policy that the Maoist communists had in India, and the designs they had on India, resulted in a war between India and China in 1965. And
62.
I'm sorry, 1962. In 1962, right after Dalai Lama had migrated to India and all of that, there was a attack on India by China, and there was a lot of uh, you know blunders committed by Indian politicians, and not just the blunders committed by Indian politicians, but the Indian communists, the adharmic people of India, joined forces with the adharmic people of China, um, and this axis of adharma and axis of dharma faced each other, right? And if India had competent politicians at the time, the Indian map would have looked very different. We
Correct. And
lost uh, we lost a big region to China. The dharmic forces lost a big region to China after the 1962 war.
that's correct. And the going back to 1960s, India itself was a country that was struggling with its identity. It had come out of 200 plus years of European colonialism in most parts, British mostly, uh, and prior to that, about 400 to 500 years of continuous Islamic colonialism. So India had a itself was trying to come in terms with its identity, and Indian politicians were caught in between, the current flavor of the world in those days being socialism and communism, and the modern, form of dharmic revivalism. So Indian politicians didn't know what to do, and the biggest mistake they made was they failed to understand China. They looked at China as this ancient China that was a co-religionist, if I can put it in Western terms, of India, of Bharat. Uh, and they couldn't imagine that Marxism or Maoism, specifically in China, which came out as a competitor to Judeo-Christian exclusivism, was itself exclusivist in nature, because it came out of Europe and it was projecting itself as an antithesis to Judeo-Christian expansionism. So Marxism itself was expansionist, and when China embraced it through Mao, it became expansionist, and all this dharmic traditions of coexistence and mutual respect was quickly thrown out of the window. And I think it was a folly on the part of Indian analysts, Indian thought leaders, Indian politicians, Nehru, if I could name him, who couldn't understand this rapid shift in China's posture towards the rest of the world. And what you saw in Tibet and thereafter in India in 1962, where China just put every effort it could to walk into what is northern Ladakh and what is also Sakshgam Valley, which is currently China gave to Pakistan for building its Belt and Road Initiative. So that entire area India lost to China. And the line of actual control, which we call as LAC today, became the de facto border by force between the two countries.
And this is what you were referring to when you and before I go further, I want to welcome Nagraj Patil, who has joined us. He joins us every week, so thank you, Nagraj ji, and welcome to the show. And for those who are just joining us, this is Hindu Lounge. We come live on Facebook every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern and corresponding time in all the other time zones. This is a live show which is hosted by World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA, under the initiative called Hindu Pact USA. So please join us every week. It is hosted by Utsav Chakrabarti, who is our Director of Advocacy and Awareness for World Hindu Council of America, and Ajay Shah. I'm the Executive Vice President for VHP America. And we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues and some of the international Hindu issues as as they evolve. This is the issue that is on top of everyone's mind, and that is our Dharma Bhumi, Bharat or India, was attacked by the adharmic Chinese forces who have abandoned their own cultural roots, and they now follow the following so-called cultural revolution, which decultured them essentially, and they have been on this expansionist spree where they are trying to intimidate, subjugate, or trap all the neighbors from the South China Sea to the Indian subcontinent to the countries in Africa under their BRI or Belt and Road Initiative and this string of pearl initiatives, and that manifested itself in the attack on in several Indian outposts in the along the line of actual control between China and India, and that has resulted in the death of 20 Indian soldiers and a corresponding number of soldiers, or maybe twice as many soldiers on the Chinese side. But China being a communist country with the controlled narrative that comes out of the Chinese Communist government, nobody really knows actually how much how much casualties they have suffered, but all reports say that their casualty rate is twice as much as India's. So but what we are trying to do in this particular show is we're trying to go through the underlying causes of what has made today's China the way it is, and the hypothesis or the contention that we have, backed up by a lot of references and reading, is that this is because Mao's cultural revolution has wiped off the dharmic backbone of China. And with me is Utsada. And Utsada, please talk about this particular slide that you have put together with some ancient historic pictures.
Yeah. So as you can see, I mean, I put together some of the pictures of monasteries, Buddhist monasteries that were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. And it was not just Buddhism that was targeted in China under Maoist expansionism. It was also their own Confucian traditions, their own Taoist tradition that were destroyed. And, some of these traditions managed to survive in the form of little temples and religious congregations in Taiwan, where the Chinese nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek had to escape and seek refuge in. In those days it was called Formosa, after the Maoist aggression and ended the Chinese nationalist movement. And so what China lost was 3,000 years of its own history, and thousands and thousands of scrolls and literature. Many of it is actually in Sanskrit, because a lot of the as much as the world doesn't want to connect Sanskrit to Buddha traditions, but many of the best literature in Mahayana Buddhism is written in Sanskrit. The Lotus Sutras and all these historical documents, wonderfully preserved in China in those days, were wiped out. So this was the heritage of the violent Maoist leftist movement that China holds close to its heart even today. If you go to the next slide.
So that let me ask you a trivia question, and I'll put this as a trivia question for all our viewers who have joined us live, and I'm going to post this question as well. But I want a commitment from our users that they will not do a Google search on it. I want to know from our viewers, so that is what is the origin of the word Mandarin? Okay, and I'm going to say that I'm going to repeat the question one more time, because we are talking about China and the Chinese ancient tradition and all that. As I said, I'm going to pose this question to our users with a request that give the answer that comes to your mind without actually looking at Wikipedia, and don't connect it with the Mandarin oranges. That's the only tip I give you. Before I go there, Utsoda, I want to actually read out. So Sanjay Mehta has joined us, and he has a question that says, there seems to be similarity between Tao and the Upanishadic traditions or teachings. Any thoughts on that? So how do you connect Upanishads with the Tao teachings?
I think the Taoist traditions are set. The traditions evolved in the similar settings under which the Upanishadic tradition evolved, which was contemplation and education and discourse. It is just like the Hindu Upanishads were an outcome of discourse. It was discourse between the Acharya and his students. And multiple Upanishads were written. I mean, we have lost many of those Upanishads, but some of them still survive and form one of the important cores of our studies in Hindu philosophies. Similarly, the Taoist traditions were also an outcome of conversations between philosophers. And they are also in the form of discussions and debates. So in that way, they hold the same lineage of evolution. Also, Taoists, I believe, are very, very in tune with nature. Just like in many of the Hindu philosophical schools, especially the Nyaya Vaisheshika school and the Sankhya Yoga schools, have this whole concept of Purusha and Prakriti, the Prakriti being an important part of our existence. Similarly, the Taoist schools also have a very strong connection to Prakriti and the balance between the living soul and nature.
Thank you, Soda. So this is the next slide that you were going to talk a little bit about, connecting the Bodhidharma in Kerala and Kumar Jiva in Kashmir and the other traditions in India with China. Can you please elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, in this slide, I put up names of 3 individuals, which I think most Indians or people from the Indian subcontinent have probably not heard of much. But if you go into and look into Chinese history, these 3 individuals are some of the most important people in the history of China. And all 3 of them had gifts from India, or from Dharmic India, not the post-colonial India, but the Dharmic India of their times, to Asia. And I think Bodhidharma out of them would be probably the most famous one, because believe it or not, from Bruce Lee movies to Jet Li movies to movies about Shaolin Temple that Hollywood produces, and becomes a fad every 10 years, it all goes back to Bodhidharma. Because Bodhidharma was the person who established the Shaolin temples and the Kung Fu tradition of martial art in Eastern Asia. And from there, eventually it developed into other forms of martial art, which were localized and responded to local socio-political and physical needs. So it went all the way to Korea and Taekwondo and Japan and Jiu-Jitsu and all those highly evolved arts. But it all starts from the Shaolin temples, which starts from Bodhidharma, who was a monk from Kerala in India. Kumarajiva, for people who study Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, they will probably identify with Kumarajiva, because Kumarajiva was the one who actually preached Mahayana Buddhism in China. And Chinese Buddhists consider him the father of Buddhism of China. Interestingly, very few people in India have known about Kumarajiva. He was a Kashmiri Brahmin prince who went and preached Mahayana, Buddha traditions there. Atish Dipankar, again, a Bengali monk from what is present day today, Bangladesh, but in those days, it was part of the Dharmic area of Bengal, was also one of the people who went to China and preached Buddhism there. Again, Mahayana Buddhism. So I think all these Chinese soldiers who attacked Indian soldiers in Galwan, I think India should erect posters of these three individuals with their Chinese names. And I think that will create an impact of them if they have studied their history.
Very aptly put, Utsuda. And I think you have a couple of more slides that you were actually going to talk about. So let me go to this next slide. And this is very interesting, because this history, this particular part of history, is never referred to. Nobody talks about it. But the fact is that the Dharmic China actually stood with the Hindus, right? With the other Dharmic traditions. So the forces of Dharma at one time fought the forces of Adharma.
Correct. And I have a theory why this part of history is not taught. Because this is the part of history that the Islamists don't want to teach, because it doesn't make them look good. And this is the part of history that the Dharmic communities don't want to teach, because these events happened in areas that are now Islamic. So both sides have kind of found their own reasons not to teach this part of history, but this is very important history, especially today, because in today, as much as we don't want to accept it, but the world is seeing the resurgence of caliphate movements, whether it is ISIS or whether it is Erdogan of Turkey. There is this revivalism of caliphate movement. So it is important for us to understand the history of this part of our history. So what I show in this slide is a reference to the book called Shahnama, which is a saga. It's a very famous book by an Iranian author named Firdausi. He wrote this book about the history. He chronicles the history of the kings of Iran or Persia, pre-Islamic Iran included. So in Shahnama, he touches upon this very critical time in our world history when Persia, which was one of the greatest civilizations in the Middle East, fell to Islam and was conquered by Islam, as was facing a purge, a violent purge where everybody who refused to convert to Islam was either forced to leave or converted to Islam. And Firoz III, who was the last Sasanian, Zoroastrian proto-Vedic community of Zoroastrianism, still survives in India. He was the last Sasanian ruler, and he had to flee Iran or Persia under the Arabic expansion that was happening there. And he found shelter through the Silk Route in the Tang dynasty in China. And the Tang dynasty of China actually approached Lalitaditya Muktipid, who was the Hindu ruler, the Karkota ruler of Kashmir. They approached him and made a pact with him so that Lalitaditya could support, the Sasanian ruler Firoz and his armies to fight back against the caliphates. So there are not a lot of mention of it in Shahnama, but it's very fascinating that, we never read about this in our history books. we probably, our people have barely heard the name Lalitaditya, because Lalitaditya was also the famous king. And I think people know him as the one who built the famous Sun Temple in Martand in Kashmir, and that's why he's famous. But it is very fascinating to read about them, and unfortunately, our sources don't refer to them. But both Chinese sources from the Tang Dynasty as well as the Shahnama refers to these incidents.
So, Utsada, I want to welcome a couple of people who just joined. Mahendra Sapa has joined, and so has Swadesh Katoch. So, welcome to both of them. And for those who are joining us, Hindu Lounge episode number 10. And the trivia question of the day is still out there. I'm waiting for someone to respond to it. What is the origin of the word Mandarin? We'll give out the answer towards the end of the show. And if you're waiting, I know everyone is waiting for Utsoda, and that is sure to come towards the end of the show also, is who is the Hindu hater of the week? I think this time we are going to talk about the Hindu hater of the week, but we are also going to talk about something that is actually being done about that Hindu hater of the week. So I urge you to stay till the end of the show, because that is going to be something that will brighten your day, that at least in some corner of the world somewhere, something is being done about a Hindu hater who had pretty much a free reign for last 50 years or 60 years. And somebody has now taken things up in there and is doing something about it. We are also going to reveal the Hindu Seva Act of the week, and that is sure to make everyone feel really, good that in America, Hindu Seva activities are in full swing. Hindus are really working hard to serve the community where we live. So all of that is on the way. And while you go to the, I think you have one more slide with Soda. And before we go to that slide, I want to welcome Manju Tiwari. Manjuji, welcome to the Hindu Lounge. And Utsoda, I believe this may be your last slide, and this is the one that I'll talk about a little bit, and then get your comments on. So that this is we in the beginning of the show we kind of talked a little bit about how the adharmic forces kind of get together, right? So adharmic forces are not just in China; they're not just in other parts of the world. They're even in the land of Dharma in Bharat. There are adharmic forces. And this is a poster from 1970s. And this 1970s poster by Communist Party said, China's chairman is our chairman. Now remember, in 1962, India fought a war with China. Remember that in 1962, the Aksai Chin region of India was captured by China. It still remains with China. And despite of that, in 1962, the Communist Party of India portrayed India as an aggressor. And in 1970s, they said that Chinese chairman is our chairman. So that this is a perfect storm of all the adharmic forces kind of coming together, right? So
that's correct. That's correct. And the Communist Party of India, in all its forms, they're more democratic versions. By the way, before I go forward, this is written in Bengali that you see. So it says,
yes.
China's chairman, Amader chairman, which translates to what you said. China's chairman is our chairman. So yeah, so the Communist Party of India in all its form, it started as a singular communist movement that was part of this transnational communist unity that was disruptive in its nature globally. Then it kind of morphed in India into two versions that were Communist Party of India, CPI, and CPIM, which were more inclined towards adjusting themselves to the democratic political setup of the country. And there was a third version which became the violent extreme leftist movements, which is called Maoism in India, which involved what also is termed as Naxalite movement. And they basically stuck to the core communist ideology that democracy literally doesn't mean anything. Everything has to be achieved through violence, and everything has to be achieved through purge. And purge means literally physically eliminating everybody who disagrees with you. Not very different from radical Islamism, I must say, except where the nature of the god is comes into picture. So this extreme violent leftist movements in India were completely supported by China since the 1960s, and they didn't hide it. I mean, one of the terrorist groups in India in the extreme left was Maoist Communist Center. So they didn't even hide their names, and that's how open the Maoist and Naxalite movement in India is. So that has been a disruptive force in India, and it has been one of the most violent movements in the entire world. And I'm saying this now because this movement is going to be exported to other parts of the world where China sees itself having trouble. So I won't be surprised if China starts supporting Maoists in America as part of disruptive movements that are spreading all around America, because every society has its share of disgruntlement and its share of unhappy and unjust things happening. What movements like these do is they prey upon those situations and turn them into a violent anarchic struggle that disrupts and destroys the society they are operating in so that they can capture power. They did that in India. They didn't succeed completely, but they cost more than 10,000 lives in the last 10 years and many more in the last 30 years. And they're going to do that in America.
Right, and we have already, as VHPA, we have said that, look, I mean, we are, we do not tolerate any kind of inequalities. We understand that the race issues and race relations, racial discrimination in America is real, and we support the struggle for racial equality, and but we also have said that we want peaceful resolution to these issues. But the adharmic forces represented by China would love to fish in troubled waters as they've done around the world. Correct? So when you look at all these struggles everywhere, or the protest movements going on everywhere, wouldn't China find a way to kind of fish in troubled waters and gain benefit out of this?
Absolutely. I think China is already doing that. I mean, the people in India, like Shama Sawant, of Indian origin, like Shama Sawant, who were closely associated with the Maoist groups in India when they were in India, I won't be surprised if they are still associated with the same ideologues and are operating on shared opinion and instructions from them when they're holding the city of Seattle hostage. So it's something that Americans have to look into. It's something that the American law enforcement should be looking into.
So I want to welcome a few people who have just joined. So Abhishek Bhattacharya has joined, Uman Agarwal has joined, and Ramesh Kumar Madhu, who has joined, has made a comment that nice session. If possible, please avoid using Zoom and boycott Chinese product. So Ramesh Kumar ji, we take your comments to heart. We have certain technical reasons why we are using Zoom right now. If we find a reasonable solution, we will eventually move away from that. But at this time, due to some of the technical limitations on our part, we are using Zoom. So that is one.
I wanted to say something, Ajay Bhai, before we go any further. You and most people in India and around the world use the term Aksai Chin for the part of Ladakh that has been captured by China. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's notice that the actual word that the Ladakhis use and the Tibetans use for Aksai Chin is Gosthana, which is a Sanskrit word which translates literally to as the land of the cows. So I think Indians should start using the word Gosthan instead of Aksai Chin for the part that they have lost to China, because that would be a step forward in reclaiming the cultural heritage of Ladakh rather than having the term that the Chinese and the Uyghurs put for it.
That's a point, really good point, Utsoda, and I stand corrected. We will use the word Gosthan going forward. So thank you. Utsoda, this is a slide that you created, which has some numbers, and maybe you can speak to it a little bit.
Right. So that slide, it shows the data. My source is Center for Conflict Studies in New Delhi, which keeps a track of all the violent groups that operate in India and the number of casualties caused by them. So this data, the chart that you see here, tabulates every violent incident that happened in the last 20 years by the Maoists or left-wing extremists, violent extremists. And as you can see, more than 10,000 people, 10,566 people have lost their lives in the last 20 years at the hands of the Maoists. And these are, some of them are security forces. You can see 2,500 security. Even if you were a Maoist supporter for a moment and would justify the death of those 2,500 security forces, the death of more than 3,000, 3,700 civilians, most of whom are poor people, really poor people who are just living their lives at a subsistence level. They are the biggest victims of the Maoists who claim to be the so-called supporters and the voice of the poor. So I just wanted to bring this chart to the notice of people who even have the slightest sympathy for left-wing extremists in India. I know it's a cool flavor of the day in many left-leaning Indian universities and even American universities, and there's a romanticized Che Guevara kind of romanticism attached to these kind of violent movements. But I must say, these are the people who do this are basically just tools in the hands of Chinese, disruptionist movements globally.
And just plain anarchist in a lot of places. I mean, whether it's Naxalites in India or Naxalites, Naxalite inspired people like Shama Sawant in US. Really, I don't know if at the core of their heart they believe in any ideology. They're just anarchists who want to create disruption and disrupt people's lives. Again, I want to emphasize that we are for racial equality. We understand Black Lives Matter. We understand that the race relations have to be improved, and we understand the historic wrongs have to be corrected for the society to peacefully coexist. But anarchy is not really the answer. There are ways that that are shown to us by people like Nelson Mandela and people like Martin Luther King Jr., who got inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, and that is the path forward, and not the kind of path that Maoists and Naxalites and the anarchists take in this country or elsewhere. Also, I want to remind everyone that the trivia question of the day is still out there. What is the origin of the word Mandarin? So Mandarin, as you guys know, is the official language of China. And we have a challenge out there. Please don't look at Wikipedia. Don't do a Google search. And tell us what the word Mandarin, what is the origin of the word Mandarin? So that is the challenge for everyone. And I hope that, someone comes through. Sorry, we are not giving out any prizes yet. Someday when we have enough funds that we generate for the program, then we'll attach a prize to it. But right now, you get our kudos. We'll put up a thumbs up sign on our Facebook, and we'll read out your name here. But it is going to be an honor for you if you can tell us what is the origin of the word Mandarin. So for those who are joining us, this is Hindu Lounge. We come live every Saturday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And we usually have a couple of really good segments at the end, and we are going to go to those. But before that, I want to actually, I also want to point out one other thing, Utsoda, that we didn't bring up in this conversation, and that is China has been, as much as China we say is adharmic, right? But it is also using Buddhism or Buddha Dharma as a political and military tool. So, for example, China is using the soft power of Buddhism. So, for example, what it is trying to do is they're funding what is called the Lumbini project. So, Lumbini one, or forest where Gautam Buddha was born, and it's trying to bring all the countries where the religious tradition is Buddha Dharma. It's trying to get them together and say, look, we are going to give $3 billion to Nepal to build a grand temple at the birthplace of Gautam Buddha. And this gets them two benefits. One, they get a soft power projection in the Buddhist countries, and they have a pretext of putting a lot of money and thereby wield a lot of power in Nepal to take away Nepal from the friendship that Nepal historically has with India. They have they've used they've used other soft power methods to maintain their they maintain their Buddhic, or rather project their Buddhist tradition as soft power. And you, Utsoda, referred a little bit earlier when you said that the Confucius institutes that are all over that China is setting up in all the universities around the world are again another way of China projecting its soft power. Whether they follow Confucianism or not is a different thing. So Utsoda, yeah, go ahead. I just want to say that please share your comments on that.
Yeah. So as I noted before, this is it's like it's after the fact analysis and approach of China with regards to promoting soft power through through dharmic traditions, whether it is Buddha traditions or Confucian traditions. It is after the fact effort, because by the late 80s, China realized that what the violent Maoist movement did was destroy its own backbone of Dharma. And it was left with an empty blackboard, which was ripe for use by other countries. The Christian missionaries walked in and started converting people. So that's when China woke to the reality of what Maoism and Marxism has done to it. But it continues to export that Maoism in other parts of the world where it wants to disrupt. This newfound love for soft power of Dharma is only on the surface. And whether it is the Lumbini project or whether it is, trying to promote Confucian Institute, it is so shallow in its depth and in its respect for the actual Dharma that it wants to promote, that very quickly people realize that if you take the money away from that project, there's nothing really dharmic about it. And it's just an effort to promote China's geopolitical agendas. And that's why the Confucius institutes around the world have failed. I mean, they started many of them in Western countries, in America itself. And very quickly, America started kicking those people out because they were not talking about Confucianism or ideas of Confucius. They were just spying, plain simple. And they had to kick them out. So I think countries like Nepal will also realize. Right now, Nepal is under a Maoist tradition, and it is ruled by a Maoist party. So obviously, it has no respect for its own dharmic traditions. But eventually, Nepal and the people of Nepal will realize that this is nothing but Chinese imperialism masquerading as a thin wafer of dharmic effort outreach. So they will realize, and people around the world, Sri Lanka has realized it, Maldives has realized it. Cambodia realized it, but now 43% of Cambodia is owned by China, literally. The land of Cambodia, 43% of it literally owned by China. So Cambodia realizing it now is not going to make any difference. Vietnam has realized it. So everybody is realizing it. It's about just a matter of time when people react.
So as we come towards the close of the program, three things remain. One is Hindu Seva Act of the Week. Other is Hindu Hater of the Week. And the third is the trivia question of the day, which is out there. And that is, what is the origin of the word Mandarin? And you have to say this without doing a Google search or looking at the Wikipedia. And Manjuji has said, is it Tamil? And the answer is no. But there's no limit on number of tries. So please keep trying. We are waiting for someone to answer. And you'll be surprised what the origin of word Mandarin is. That is the official language of China. Okay. So the Seva Act of the Week. I think we have a really good, a dharmic act that you have picked. So what is the Seva Act of the Week?
I think it's our organizations in Buffalo that have done seva work. I'll probably let you elaborate on it more.
So that the New Jersey chapter of Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, or World Hindu Council of America, has taken up the task to support the graduate students in Buffalo at State University of Buffalo, or UB as it's popularly called. And they've taken up a task of supporting students who had campus jobs, but the campuses are not open. And these students have to now, they're still studying online courses, etc. But they struggle with the money. So the World in the Council of America's New Jersey chapter has taken up the task to raise $12,000 to support the students at UB by supporting them to the tune of about $60 a month for groceries. And if we take the number of students and the 3 months during the summer that they need support, the total adds up to be about $12,000. So I think, and sitting in New Jersey, hearing about the people who are part of VHPA, felt real compassion for students who are in UB, and they have started this fundraising. So I urge our viewers to go to vhp-america.org. That's vhp-america.org/donation. And please donate generously to this particular cause under COVID relief. And we will direct this particular the funds raised to the students at UB or SUNY Buffalo. Again, we are looking to raise $12,000 for the students who are stranded in some ways. They're still doing their courses, but they have lost their summer jobs on campuses, and we are trying to help them with their grocery bills. So please help them by donating generously. Utsada, before I go to the final segment, Hindu Hater of the Week, do you have a guess on the origin of the word Mandarin? I know you know that we don't quite prepare for everything that we say in this show. A lot of it is extemporaneous, and so this is one of those things that we didn't talk about, and I figured that I'll spring this on you as a trivia question and see, as well-read and expert that you are, I'm sure you would know.
Actually,
what is the origin of the word Mandarin?
I would let you describe it. I actually don't. I could make wild guesses, but I would let the readers, the listeners, do that, as well as you bring it to the fore.
So we kind of exhausted our users' chances because no user has come forward. So I am going to. I'm so glad that I actually got you on this one. So
I try to know, but I don't. I try my best.
So I am going to post it on our Facebook, and so this is the word that came about in late 16th century, and it came from the word from a Portuguese word via a Malay word. So and a Malay word is mantri. Mantri means counselor, and the counselor. So the word mantri became Mandarin via Portuguese corruption of language. So that is the origin. So the ties between India and China are not just limited to this Buddha Dharma, Dharmic tradition, but they are so deeply so deep ties that the official language of China, Mandarin, has its origin in the Malay word mantri, and that
actually the Malay word mantri comes from Sanskrit, from mantra. Somebody who recites, gives good advice. So yeah, the mantri word comes from mantra, which is a Sanskrit word.
That's right. And actually, somebody did point out, I should say, let's see, who pointed that out? I think somebody pointed out that did it come from mantra? And I was, I should have. So this is, I don't know who posted it. Maybe you posted it from Manan or Manas or mantra. So yes, but I was looking, I was looking for the word mantri. So close enough. I'll give you that. So that, and so finally, something that we've all been waiting for, Utsoda, Hindu Hater of the Week.
So the Hindu Hater of the Week this time is from outside America. Every week we have been picking somebody. Unfortunately, we don't like picking people to be Hindu Haters of the Week, and ideally we would want to have a week when we don't have a Hindu Hater of the Week. And in fact, many weeks when we don't have Hindu Haters of the Week. But this time we picked the group called Tablighi Jamaat, which is one of the largest Islamic revivalist movement from the Indian subcontinent, from South Asia, as the Hindu Hater of the Week. And I would specifically focus on their activities in a state called Haryana, which is very close to the Indian capital Delhi, in a region called Mewat. And for the last 5 decades, the communities of Mewat, the Hindu community, and the other communities, most of whom come from the so-called downtrodden sections of the society, have been living a hell because of the bullying and the aggression and the violence, forced conversion, and kidnappings being done by members of Tablighi Jamaat. And in Mewat, it's not just the local members of the Tablighi Jamaat that operate. They come from more than 50 countries from around the world, and they are Islamic radicals. So finally, the government in Haryana has taken steps to arrest individuals who are breaking the law, especially causing violence to members of the other religious communities in Mewat. And for that, I commend the state of Haryana and the government there. But
So the not state of Haryana, I would say the VHP in Bharat, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, actually set up a fact-finding committee. They came out with a report. They made concrete proposals to the Haryana government, and the Haryana government actually approved a 4-point program at the insistence of VHP. And those 4 points were: one, the entire conversion. And you would think that these are the kind of things that you would need in a country like Pakistan, but Mewat is a mini Pakistan in Bharat. Okay? It's a mini Pakistan in Bharat, run by Tablighi Jamaat. So the kind of laws that had to be brought in India to protect 80% majority of Hindus in Bharat, in a mini Pakistan called Mewat. One, the entire conversion law would be enacted to stop the forced conversion and love jihad. Two, the cow slaughter would be the cases which is illegal in Bharat as per the constitutional directive. The cases of cow slaughter would be heard in fast-track courts, and if there's a need, the current laws will be changed. A battalion, okay, that's about 3,000 soldiers of the IRB, which is a paramilitary force in India, would be set up in Mewat to assist in re-establishing the rule of law in Mewat. And after removing the illegal occupation of Hindu religious and public properties, because Tablighi Jamaat has taken over the Hindu religious places and the public properties, a board will be set up for these real estate and institutions that would ensure their care and protection. So the fact that you need to enact these laws in Bharat, in Hindu Dharma Bhumi, what does it say about Bharat? And what does it say about Tablighi Jamaat?
Well, the Tablighi Jamaat, many people heard about it and learned about it during this COVID crisis when it became a super spreader, and its congregations were one of the hot spots for spread of COVID virus because they were not following the directives for social distancing. But prior to that, if you people need to know that Tablighi Jamaat has a huge membership across the world. And in countries like Maldives, in countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, they are also the largest number of contributors to the terror group ISIS. So it's not a child's play. I mean, the largest number of members of ISIS, which came from different parts of the world, especially those who came from these 4 countries, Maldives, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan, they were members of Tablighi Jamaat. So it is literally a halfway house for really serious terror groups around the world. So I mean, I'm glad that Mewat has been brought. At least attempts are being made to bring Mewat under the rule of law again. And I commend the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America for helping bring this out to the news, and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad in India for doing what it does silently year after year. With all the brickbats that come to it from the media and the social talkers, it's commendable. And these are the things that silently work behind the scenes to make India safe again.
Thank you, Utsoda. And this is once again, thank you very much. I think we had a really great conversation, as we always do. And I would urge our viewers to join us again next week. And please tell your friends to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/VHPA videos. youtube.com/VHPA videos. We are looking to reach 1,000 subscribers. Please help us achieve our goal of 1,000 subscribers. I thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you again next week. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you and namaste everybody. Thank you and namaste Ajay bhai. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel VHPA videos. You get us the ads, and once we get to 1,000 subscribers, and maybe we will be able to give out some awards for our quiz questions.
That's right.
So thank you everybody and namaste, and have a great week ahead.
Thank you.